I believe is the coming great deception. When, not if, the so-called extraterrestrials reveal themselves, what will you do? When this happens, it will change everything. This is why I'm showing the first 40 minutes of the film, UFOs Are Real, for free, to get the information, at least some of it, out to you. I travel around the country speaking at conferences, and this led me to ask the audiences how many of those sitting there had actually seen a UFO, lights in the sky, had sleep paralysis, or an encounter with some sort of an entity. I was astonished as upwards of 30% of the people raised their hands. This led to the making of this film. Everyone who comes on the record has had a first-hand experience with the burgeoning UFO phenomena. So sit back and prepare to have your worldview rocked and perhaps your paradigm changed as you listen to their testimonies. In their own words, UFOs are real. Thanks for watching.
My name is Jennifer Ann Marvey, and I saw a UFO.
My name is Terry Staley, and I saw a UFO.
Dad was driving and he said, "Manuel, look, there's a UFO." And I was looking out the window but couldn't see up, and he was looking up out his side window.
They stopped over the treetops, and it was very weird and made you very uncomfortable.
There's something happening all over the world. What I'm speaking about is the UFO phenomenon. These craft move with impunity throughout all countries on this planet. No one knows really where they come from or what they want. The problem is, there are people sitting in your church right now that have had encounters, that have seen lights in the sky. They're baffled by it. Oftentimes, they're afraid to come forward for fear of ridicule. The purpose of this film is to pull the covers off this dirty little secret that the church refuses to address. Join me as we explore the folks who have had encounters in their own words.
L.A. Marzulli is a sought-after conference speaker. He travels all over the United States and Canada, lecturing and presenting his cutting-edge research to audiences. For this film, Marzulli asks for a show of hands of people who have seen a UFO, lights in the sky, or other unexplained phenomenon.
How many of you have had seen a UFO, sleep paralysis, or an encounter with a being? Just raise your hand. Raise your hand. Keep them up. Hold them up. How many people in this room have had an encounter? Strange lights in the sky, UFOs, raise your hand please. Hi, look around the room. So these, hold them up real high so I can see them. Wow. Look around, keep them up, keep them up, keep them up. Keep them up, hold them up.
My name is Alan Matthews. I've seen a UFO.
I've seen a UFO.
And I saw a UFO.
And I saw a UFO.
I've seen a UFO.
And I have seen a UFO.
We saw 3 UFOs. That's what we even called them back then.
I went up to the window and we could see this giant UFO.
And saw 3 or 4 orbs that were up in the sky doing circles and erratic movements up and down in circular motion.
And all of a sudden we see this light in the sky, and I asked my husband, is that a plane? And he said, I don't think so. And so we kept watching it, and it hovered over the treetops, and you could see the flashing lights around it. It was round. See the flashing lights around it, and then you could see the windows and lights in the windows, but you couldn't see inside the windows.
This particular night we looked over into a field and saw 3 hovering lights.
This thing was huge, and it was, well, I didn't know until I started using the camera, but this thing was moving around and shifting and all kinds of things.
And I was driving that night. It was quite late at night, and I started to see some kind of orange flary lights in the desert. And so I kept looking at them while I was driving, and they seemed to be jumping up and down, and there was no sound of a helicopter or a plane.
And I saw these 2 balls of light, these orbs, and they were perfectly round, and it was hard because it was dark to get a perspective on how far away they were, but they looked to be about 6 feet in diameter, and they were floating. To me, it looked like about 50 feet from my car.
And it kept coming closer. It was just this green or orange orb with like a red T in it. It kept coming and coming, and then it shot straight west across the Pacific Ocean.
That came forward, it just came out of nowhere, and it was a white light. And then within seconds, another one joined it above it, and then a third one joined it to the right of it. So they stayed in a triangular shape, and they hovered for a while.
Floated in a way I've never seen anything float. It didn't have a sound. It didn't have, it had no air. You couldn't hear anything like a helicopter's propellers.
My wife, I said, Jen, come out here and look at this. And that was actually before it had disappeared. So she watched it too for a few, I suppose, minute or so. And it moved around in different directions.
And the object was like hovering over the trees. It wasn't moving.
It went at an incredible speed, stopped, and then did a turn that would absolutely have been impossible.
As the lights came closer and closer, it struck me that there was no sound whatsoever.
And it had different colors of lights that went all the way around it. It hovered for about 20 minutes as we watched it, and then it went down in between some mountains.
They were just these unusual lights.
It was maybe half a mile, 3/4 of a mile away. It was a triangle, and I could see the clouds going past.
Al, you've had multiple experiences, and some of these experiences were very troubling to you. I want to go back to really the beginning of your life when you had your first encounter, and what was that like? What were you thinking when you saw this thing?
I was just a young guy. I was out on a hockey rink in Ottawa, middle of winter, with my twin brother and probably about 8 other kids. Beautiful sunny day, not a cloud in the sky. And one of the guys looks up and says, "What's that?" We all stopped and looked up. We saw 3 UFOs, that's what we even called them back then, hovering in formation, like a triangle. The sun was beaming off these things. We looked at them and we're all like mesmerized, going, "What are those?" And all of a sudden, they moved like that in the sky, just darted and then stopped again. Everyone ran into the shack, the changing room, except for me. I stayed out on the middle of the ice and stared at these things, and I said, in my mind, I said, I need to know what these things are. Right after that, I got an angelic feeling. That's the only way I can describe it. Angelic feeling of these things, of warmth and love.
Euphoria?
Euphoria is another word you could use.
What did the craft look like?
They were like disc-shaped objects. They were all exactly the same size, no sound, silver with
dull silver, bright silver?
Bright silver with the sun just beaming off these things, and no sound. It was very spooky. Never seen anything like that.
How close were they to you?
I would say a mile away, because this pollution plant where they were hovering over was a mile away from the rink.
Okay, and they were right over that?
Hovering right over, maybe 100 feet up.
Okay,
yeah.
Wow.
Pretty crazy.
Now, this was the first of many experiences that would follow that.
That's correct.
And I want to sort of cut to the chase here. There was one incident, and it had to do with this woman who basically changed her appearance right in front of you. Tell us about that.
That was mind-blowing. That was in 2008, September. I'll always remember that. I was working for Williams Moving and Storage for their overseas division. We had a container coming in from Kuwait. The lady's name was Diane Kelly. I met her with one of my employees. I brought him along to give a hand. He had heard all my stories. And he didn't diss me. He said, you know, I've heard strange stuff like this. My parents know about it. He didn't make fun of me or anything like that. And anyway, we met this woman. She showed up in her car. I said, "Hi, I'm Al. This is so-and-so. We're here to unload your Canadian container. Welcome to Canada." Shook her hand, and I noticed she was a very pretty lady, well-dressed. She was wearing the weirdest glasses I've ever seen in my life. They were just like off the charts. I'm like,
How so? What do they look like?
They were black and wrapped around, so it would cover the side of her eyes so no sun would get in.
Okay.
So I sort of figured, oh, maybe she has an eye problem or something.
Sure.
But anyway, we moved on from there. The conversation went this way. I said, for some reason, it was September, the rainy season's coming in Vancouver, and I was just making simple conversation. I said, "Why are you moving from Kuwait? It's so nice over there now, the war's over, and you know, you're coming back here." And she goes, she changed totally. She goes, "There's gonna be another war. And for some reason I said, "Well, don't you believe in a higher power?" I don't know why I said that, but that's what I said. And she looked at me and she goes, "What do you mean, Al? UFOs?" And I'm like, "What?"
So out of the blue, she just
said that. And I said,
"What?" And she still has the dark glasses.
Yes, that's right. I look at my other guy that's working for me, and he just sort of shrugs his shoulders. He heard her. And I go, "What do you mean by that?" And she goes, "We were supposed to meet. I know that you know." And I go, "Know what?" She goes, "I know you've been taken by them many times, and so have I."
So let me get this straight. You've never met this woman before?
Not at all.
Not at all. She has no idea who you are.
Exactly.
I mean, she has no idea of not only does she not know who you are, but she has no access to figure out who you are.
Oh, totally. Like nothing.
So she's saying something which completely startles you. Is that a fair?
My jaw dropped.
Okay.
I'm thinking, is she reading my mind? So.
But she looked human.
Totally human.
Totally human, okay.
Totally human.
At this point.
Except for those weird glasses,
okay.
But then
and
again.
And you dismissed that with the eye thing.
That's right. I'm thinking something else, right? But once she did that, I'm thinking, oh my God, here we go again. It's fast forward 2008 now when this happened, and my encounters back east that got very, very disturbing were in 1993 and 94. I got out of Ottawa, drove out from there in 2 days to Vancouver to get away from this stuff, and this is how many years later?
So you were trying to flee the experiences.
They got
The
so
UFO
traumatic,
experiences.
so traumatic back east, I had to get out of there.
Okay.
Scary, beyond scary. So then this happens, and nothing had happened after I moved out here until I met this lady.
Okay.
So yeah, that was shocking. She would do things like in the elevator going up to the floor where we're storing her furniture, she would whisper in my ear and say, "They're listening." I go, "Who's listening?"
They're listening.
"They're listening." I go, "Who's listening?" And she goes, "Them, you know, the Greys." She goes, "They're always watching." And I told her,
And you never had her, you never conversed with any of this stuff, and she's coming out and letting you know this.
and starting to spook me and my other assistant.
Sure.
I said to her, I mean, that's just out of the blue to start doing this stuff. I said, "Look, I'm here to do a job. You're really starting to creep me out." That's the word I had to use.
And that would, I mean, it would creep anybody out. I mean, you would, you know, what's going on here?
I know.
You know, what are you talking about? This woman sounds really crazy, certifiable to say things like this.
I got the job done.
Okay.
What I did do, and I think it's human nature, I gave her my number.
Okay.
Because
mistake number one.
Big mistake number one, and it was just like human interest and how do you know this stuff? I need to eventually talk to you more. I gave her my number. As you said, big mistake. She phoned me up about a week later and said, "Oh, I'm just down the road from your place," because I told her the area where I live. And she goes, "Why don't you come down for a drink after work?" So I said, "Sure." I'm with my buddy, once again, that met her the first time.
The same guy?
Yes.
Okay.
I said, "Hey, do you want to come? I'm just going to go home and clean up." And he goes, "Not a chance." He goes, "What are you doing? Stay away from that." I said, "No, I got to find out. Just my intuition. I got to find out more about this." He goes, "No, I'm not going." I went. And that's when the strangest thing ever happened in my life, and I've had some strange things. I walked into their place, I buzzed up, her friend answered the door, it was her apartment, a beautiful 2-story condo right on the Fraser River, obviously in BC, and they're both out on the deck, and they have these big, big glasses of wine.
Now, did the friend look normal to you?
Totally normal.
Okay.
And she introduced
no sunglasses?
her. No, just normal.
Okay.
No sunglasses. She introduced her to me, and I could tell they'd been drinking, and I knew I'm not passing judgment. They're having some fun. And she introduced her friend. We sat down on the deck. She's still wearing those strange glasses. Their glasses of wine are right in front of me on a table. And out of the corner of my eye, I noticed this massive black fly in her wine glass. And it's almost like it was stuck to the glass. It didn't make sense. It wasn't moving, and I pointed it to her. I said, "Oh, look, there's a big fly in your wine glass. I'll grab some Kleenex and get it for you." She smiled at me and she goes, "No, I'll get it." She put her finger in the wine glass. She didn't crush the fly. The fly stuck to her finger, and she put it towards her mouth and went like this. And I just looked at her and I go, "Holy smokes," I go, "if you're hungry, I can make you a sandwich. Why did you do that?" And she just smiled again. So that's the starting of how strange this got, and it only got stranger. From there, she took off her glasses. She got on top of me while I was sitting in my chair, and she started lifting up my shirt. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she goes, "Oh, how old are you? You're well preserved."
Let me stop you there. So this is not typical behavior for you?
No, not at all.
Okay, so this is something normally you wouldn't allow this?
No,
Okay.
I figured it's because she'd been drinking, but it got a little carried away when she started asking me how old I was, and the glasses were off, as I said. She went to kiss me, and I pushed her away, and her eyes shape-shifted.
Now, when you say, what did they look like before? What are they?
Just normal. I don't know if they're brown eyes, or they certainly weren't like blue eyes or emerald eyes. I would have noticed that right away. I think they were just normal, darker looking eyes, but the whites were white. When I pushed her back, when she went to kiss me, I pushed her back, her eyes shape-shifted. The whites went to a golden color with black streaks, and her pupils shrunk. I upset her, and that's what happened. When I pushed her back, her eyes shape-shifted, and I pushed her off me. That was my reaction. And I said, "What the heck was that?" And she gave me the most evil laugh you've ever heard. And I got the heck out of there.
So you ran out of there?
I ran out of there, and she was chasing me. I'm not telling you anymore.
Did the pupils, were they round pupils or were they serpentine?
Round.
Okay, round pupils.
Yeah. What I would describe her eyes as, it's like a snake eyes or a reptile's eyes.
Reptile's eyes.
Yeah, with the little black streaks in that. Okay. Yeah, it was absolutely shocking.
So you got out of there?
Got out of there.
And then you came to Gordy Tongs, correct?
I talked to a couple of people. Right. My girlfriend first, she said, "What are you doing?" She trusts me. And I said, "Yeah, I had to find out more about this." She goes, "You stay away from her." That's when I started waking up to all this stuff. It had to end. It had to end. It had to end. It had to end.
In 1998, I was moving to Colorado, and I was driving through Kansas, which is very flat. It's a plain. My brother's girlfriend was in the passenger seat. My brother was asleep in the back seat. We're driving, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and off in the horizon was a large glowing orb, orange. It was smaller than the sun, orange. It was just gone. After it was gone, all three of us, we said nothing to each other. We kind of just stared back at the road and just kept driving. And we ended up going to a rest stop probably an hour and a half later and stopping for a rest. And that's when the conversation got brought up again, like, what did we see? But after it vanished from our eyes, like from the side of the car, we didn't say anything. We weren't even really in awe. It was like no facial expressions. We were just kind of just focused back on driving.
I absolutely think that there's going to be disclosure in one form or another. I'm not certain about what that will be. Number one is, I think we're right on the verge. When I say on the verge, it could happen this year or next year, where the scientific community is going to make an announcement that will reverberate throughout the whole world, where they will essentially say that we now have genetic evidence that planet Earth was seeded by some kind of extraterrestrial race X amount of years ago. I'm absolutely convinced of that, because the theory of evolution is under attack, and this still takes place somewhat under the jurisdiction of the theory of evolution, but the idea is that we were seeded by an extraterrestrial race. And I think an announcement is coming soon.
Well, I certainly think a disclosure is imminent, and not just because I say so, but if you, as you've done many a times and pointed out, there's all kinds of soft disclosure that's going on.
There's something definitely going on, and there's reports everywhere of sightings of different things.
I'd say, well, why are you then interested in this other subject? Well, because we live in the last days, and these things are going to be revealed.
And so it is, and there are many countries of the world right now that are disclosing, releasing official Ministry of Defense files. Our own Paul Hare, former Defense Minister of Canada, he's been going around Canada and the States involved with disclosure.
And you can go back to the 1980s, and they're talking about it in an imminent kind of a way. In the 1990s, they're talking about it in an imminent kind of way. It's always, we're ready to come. We're almost there.
In terms of disclosure, whether it is like a fallen angel technology disclosure, because I believe that occult technology exists, fallen angel technology exists, or whether it is a psychological, like a Project Blue Beam, where it's some kind of very sophisticated illusion. It would have to be pretty sophisticated. But we're on the verge of something, because we have geneticists saying that we've got the DNA pool of mankind has extraterrestrial DNA in it. We have this convergence of scientific information. So absolutely yes, a disclosure is coming. And with the stuff coming out of the Vatican and other sources, it could happen any year now, or any month actually.
Dennis's UFO encounter brings a unique perspective to us, as the mysterious object was confirmed by multiple witnesses, all who were professional pilots. Here is his testimony, and it is true.
Dennis, so you're a certified pilot?
I was.
Okay.
I'm retired. I let my medical slip, but I was a professional pilot for about 40 years.
40 years.
And I flew 15, 20 years after that.
And you had an experience while you were flying. Tell me about that.
I did. It was in the early stages of my commercial aviation experience. I was flying from Lima, Peru to Mexico City.
Okay.
And it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, about an hour and a half after takeoff. And
towards Mexico City?
Towards Mexico, from Lima to Mexico. We're at 31,000 feet, and the sky was clear of cloud. We were above cloud, about a quarter moon. And as I was leaving the first officer, I was the second officer. He went back there for crew rest. I was sitting in the front of the co-pilot seat, and the captain hit my left arm and said, "What do we have here, Dennis?" And I looked up, and I saw a very bright light about 40 degrees off our left of our nose, about 10 degrees above the horizon. And very quickly we could discern that it was coming towards us, directly towards us. And this one light turned into two lights, as an automobile does as it comes closer to you. And very quickly it turned into beams of light. And there was a beam that was pointed forward relative to our direction, and pointed backwards, the other one, so fore and aft. And they were angled up above the horizon, about 30 degrees, and equal in intensity and length and size. As it stopped beside us, as it came in directly towards us, didn't drift on our windscreen at all, so it was coming directly at us at a very fast speed.
Very high rate. How fast were you going? 500
Well,
miles
we measure in percentage of speed of sound, and we were doing 8.3, I think 8.2.
Okay.
0.82, and which is about 500 miles an hour, yeah. Okay. And then basically these beams of light angled down about 30 degrees. The aft one increased in size and length and intensity, and the forward beam shrank to about a third of its size.
Okay.
And then as it stopped, very beautifully and coordinatedly, these beams of light angled towards almost parallel to the horizon, just maybe 1 or 2 degrees down. and they became equal in size and intensity. The beams were a wispish bluish gray, and they were like cylinders of light, big beams of cylinders light. And as we were both traveling forward, they were formating on us. As we were both traveling forward, there were sparks originating in the front beam as we were traveling along at various points, and then shooting rapidly down the beam. So we hypothesized that it was probably an electric type propulsion system, and this was the exhaust or the photon beams that were going out. I mean, no guessing on that, obviously.
Conjecture.
Conjecture, yeah.
But based on, you know.
Based on what I've seen in the air, as I say, I've flown for professionally for 40 years. There's a lot of electric. Of these two beams of light. Between the lights, there were a row of windows, maybe 18, 20 windows that were rectangular. They weren't round. They were fairly large, and they descended in the center, so it was like a curve in the center. Then there was a distance between the forward window light and the beginning of the beam of light. There was another light just right on top of that. Impossible to tell the size or because we didn't know the distance. But the perception we got was that it was very close and probably about the same size as us as it drifted by the left wing.
So it was pacing with you?
It was formation flying, yeah. Okay. And for quite a while, it's interesting. All the time I give here is we afterwards discussed and we wrote down how long we thought, because nobody had a stopwatch, the various phases of this sighting took place. So for an example, the time we first saw it to the time it was formating on us, we guessed at about 5 seconds. That's all. Now we can see other aircraft that have landing lights on at about 50 miles, if they have landing lights on up at that altitude. This was brighter than that, and so I assume that it was further than that. But say 50 miles in 5 seconds, well, you're looking at 36,000 miles an hour.
That's impossible. Let me just ask you something. You are, because you're a pilot, you are a trained observer. Is that a fair statement?
It is. I was in the military. I was a fighter pilot in the military. Wow. Interceptor, flew all the jets we had. Mm-hmm. And so I have had lots of experience intercepting and fighting and playing with other aircraft in the air. So I'm fairly things. And this was with only 18 months after my military career.
And how long did the craft pace the
we figured about 7 minutes.
7 minutes. And then how did it leave the scene?
The beams of light angled down about 30 degrees and increased in intensity, and the thing just shot away.
When you say
up
shot
and away. It just rapidly disappeared. 5 seconds or so and it was gone.
Which is impossible. We don't have anything like that today.
Oh no, it was, it defied the centrifugal force if it was material. Mm-hmm. So it looked like material from us because the quarter moon that we had was behind us on our right, and we could see light, the moon beam lights reflecting off the fuselage. but we couldn't discern the shape or the edges of it.
I filmed this video out of the window, my living room window of my trailer, and basically I didn't even realize it. I just looked out the window for no apparent reason, just to check on the surroundings outside, and I see this white thing in the sky, and it's brighter than normal. And at first thought, I was like, man, that must be Venus, because you know, this is January and it's in the southwestern sky. This is Venus. And it's like, no, it can't be Venus. That thing is huge. So and you're thinking, okay, Venus and Saturn are kind of aligned, like they are kind of right, or they was a few months ago, and which makes it bigger. But this thing was huge, and it was, well, I didn't know until I started using the camera, but this thing was moving around and shifting and all kinds of things. So this was on January, I believe, January 22nd of 2009 when I filmed this out my window with just a Canon ZR200, just a mini DV consumer use camera, and I filmed it for probably, I don't know, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, something like that, and it just, you know, very weird looking thing in the sky, and just it would move in and move out, it would shift, and the object has like some type of, you would almost call them like railroad tracks at the top third of the object, and just it would move, it would shift, it would rotate. Then towards the end of the video, it almost looked three-dimensional, and then it almost looked like it was collar bursting and burning with fire. Then it would go back to its normal shape. But basically, I filmed this thing for like 3 minutes 22 seconds, and my cousin had called, which lives approximately maybe 4 or 5 miles from me, asked me if I'm seeing this thing in the sky, and she filmed it too with a handheld VHS-C recorder, and she's like, I've never seen nothing like this before, and I was like, I haven't either. So I just kept on filming. I stopped filming, and then after that is when I got the call. So I went to go out and film again, but it wasn't there.
My name is Jennifer Ann Marvey. I was a freshman in high school. Me and my sister was in a chapter called Future Homemakers of America, which was a chapter for all girls. We was at a Halloween party at our high school, and we had some girls with us that were in a foster home that was not able to attend unless they had a way to and from the party. So my sister offered to do that, and there was 12 of us in the car. As we was dropping the girls off, it got down to where there was just 6 of us girls. 3 of the 6 were girls that were in current foster care. As we were taking them home, we was in the Appalachian area of Hocking Hills, and we had saw lights, and they were saying it was probably just a truck, someone mud running. And I was telling them that, you know, they weren't familiar with the area, and there was no roads there, that it couldn't be a truck, that was a lot of trees, and on top of the trees we seen, you know, a shape and light, almost like running lights. And we stopped to look at whatever this was, and they were saying it was a truck, and I explained to them, and then they finally realized that it was trees, and the object was like hovering over the trees, it wasn't moving, and that there was multiple lights. And we got scared, and I told my sister who was driving, I said, you need to just go. And she was speeding. I remember her speeding, but it was like we weren't moving. And as we finally got to the house to drop the foster girls off, the foster mother came out and was cursing us and said that we were hours late. And as I looked at my watch, there was no way that we were hours late, because we had left the school approximately 30-40 minutes prior to that and already had dropped off 6 girls. But according to the mother, we were hours late, and she was irate. And we all, to this day, have talked about these memories, and we know that we seen a UFO or something that was not ordinary, and we all now are in our 30s and 40s and still all remember this. And that was what I believe to be a UFO.
My name is Randy Clark,
And about 1965, I was in a little town in Indiana and playing music with a friend of mine. I came out of his place, went to put and I took off running towards my friend's house because it, quite frankly, scared me. And that fight thing, it happens real fast. So anyway, hit his door and hollered at him, and he came running out, big-eyed, all because he had 2 children. He thought something happened to them, because I was extremely excited. We got out in the front yard, I pointed to the sky, and by this time it was to the, would have been a little west of his house, right, just out in front of it, about the corner of his house. He had the same experience. He went to take off and run, and I grabbed him because I realized it was going away from us. And it just kept going down the street till it got to the end of the street. The craft was probably about 40 feet long, maybe, about like that probably. And probably about, I would think, about 16 to 20 feet wide. Anyway, it got down to the end of the street, and it bobbled like this and made absolutely no noise and just disappeared. I mean so fast that you could blink and it wouldn't be there. But there was no propulsion, no noise, nothing. It just disappeared.
My name is Terry Staley, and I saw a UFO. Well, when I was 12 years old, I was babysitting for the doctor next door, and I came out about, it was probably about 10 in the evening, and I was walking across the driveway to my grandmother's house, and I looked up in the sky, and there was a formation of probably, I'd say about 12 of them. There was, maybe 3 or 4 across, and then the rest of them tailed behind. And the doctor saw me looking up in the sky, and so she walked out, and she looked up, and then my mother and grandmother walked out, and they saw, and then we watched them for a little while. They were all flying in a formation. And then we saw an airplane come through and saw it flashing red and green, and the minute that the airplane came close to these things, they just all scattered.
You've heard and seen a lot of first-hand stories from a variety of witnesses who have seen UFOs up close, and their testimony's true. But there's lots more to come, as you've seen less than half of the film, as in their own words, UFOs Are Real, is 1 hour and 37 minutes in length. We know for a fact that UFO sightings have reached an all-time high. Can disclosure of the so-called extraterrestrial or ET presence be far off? You can arm yourself with what the producer of this film believes is vital information. You'll want to see and hear Al Matthews' closing remarks as he weighs in from first-hand knowledge of who and what these beings actually may be. You'll hear from two whistleblowers who claim to have been in deep underground military bases, and what they encountered there was not from this world. You'll also hear a deathbed confession from Colonel Hill, who claimed to be present at the 1947 Roswell, New Mexico UFO crash. Colonel Hill told our witnesses that what came down was not a weather balloon. There's so much more, and you can watch the rest of the film right now by going to our Vimeo channel, The Watchmen Chronicles, and purchasing the film for only $9.99. Or, if you're a collector, you can purchase the DVD for only $19.99 by going to our website, www.lamarzulli.net.